That indicates normally several things. It indicates that there has been a leak of some nature and that fuel is escaping. It does not indicate why. It just indicates that there was fuel enveloping the bottom side, or in your picture actually it was the top side, but both sides of the main fuel tank and also right around the solid rocket boosters. So you had fuel coming up in areas where on normal launches we never see any type of fuel or vapors. It normally is straight down and you see nothing coming up and surrounding the vehicle or the solid rocket boosters or the main engine. So that was significantly different than anything we have seen in the past. And that is one of the things that we know now, even though NASA has made no announcements and no indications of what the cause of the accident may be. We know that they are looking at that, and they're looking at that very closely. We still do not know, and they're the two main areas that they appear to be interested in and they appear to be looking at closely: the solid rocket boosters and also the main fuel tank. It appears from everything that we have seen and you have seen on the videotapes and what the NASA people are looking at, that the main area of concern are those solid rocket boosters and the main fuel tank. And we're just going to have to wait until a little more information, which I anticipate we will be getting when Jess Moore, the Associate Administrator of NASA, and a man very closely connected with the Shuttle program, makes his announcement and holds a briefing at 3:30 Eastern Time today here at the Kennedy Space Center.
Bruce, we want to underscore that for those who perhaps didn't pick up on it when we first broadcasted or joined us later in progress, that NASA now has scheduled a news conference for 3:30 Eastern Time, 2:30 in Central Time Zone. That's coming up in about 40 minutes from now. That will be the first official word, so far as we know, from NASA about what happened today and why. Keep in mind that NASA, up to and including now, has made no official announcement on the fate of the 7 Americans aboard the Space Shuttle Challenger. There is nothing anywhere to indicate that any of the 7 survived this morning's explosion, but NASA has made no official announcement about that, and we here at CBS News we do plan to cover the NASA news conference at 3:30 Eastern Time, coming up in somewhat less than 40 minutes live. This is part of our continuing CBS News live coverage of today's NASA nightmare, the disaster in space, the loss of the Space Shuttle Challenger some 72 to 75 seconds after it lifted off from the pad at Cape Canaveral. As Bruce Hall has pointed out, it was from a different launch pad this time than from before. Also, the weather was a factor in delaying the launch today. 28-degree weather in northern Florida. A deep winter freeze had plunged into that part of the state. The Space Shuttle Challenger, this flight, which among other things was designed to study Halley's Comet and to launch a satellite to help NASA with its communications network. This very flight had been undergone several previous delays before today's weather delay for 2 hours. The 2 hours was taken up at least partially by NASA by studying and looking over the icicles which were on the spacecraft very early in the morning. But it was decided as the day warmed up a bit in Florida and as the NASA experts looked over the spaceship that it would be all right to launch, and the launch came off about 2 hours late. Shortly after 11:30 Eastern Time this morning, about 11:35, the launch went up. Everything looked A-OK for the first 70 seconds or so of the flight. Then there was the indication of 2 possible what is called a flame indications. Then the very large explosion. The Space Shuttle Challenger exploded in this massive ball of flame and was hurtled into the Atlantic Ocean in small bits and pieces. There appeared to be no chance that school teacher Krista McAuliffe and her 6 crewmates, the astronauts and mission specialists, could have survived. Rescue ships and helicopters raced to the scene, and about 18 miles southeast of the Florida launch site, and they remain on scene, but there have been no encouraging reports from that scene at all. On board the Challenger, besides schoolteacher Krista McAuliffe, were Francis Dick Scobie, 46 years old, the commander of the spacecraft, his co-pilot, Michael Smith, aged 40, Judy Resnick, 36 years old, who was to be in the second American woman in space, a mission specialist, Ellison Onizuka, 39 years old, from Hawaii. We're a little behind on our photographs here. Judy Resnick, the mission specialist. We wanted to give all of the names for those of you who had not heard them. Ellison Onizuka, Arnold McNair, 35 years old and a PhD. The satellite engineer, 41-year-old Gregory Jarvis. and McAuliffe, who was the 37-year-old Concord, New Hampshire social studies teacher and mother of two. Those were the Americans aboard Space Shuttle Challenger this morning when it blew up some 72 to 75 seconds after launch. Bruce Hall in Florida, there has always been this discussion and some controversy over whether manned spacecraft, spaceflight is worth it. Anybody who saw the movie The Right Stuff or read Tom Wolfe's book or has read anything about the space program knows that there have been continuing questions whether manned spacecraft is worth it. This is likely to rekindle that debate, is it not?
Rekindle that debate, Dan, without any doubt. But one thing that you should keep in mind, the commander of this flight, Dick Scobie, who was a veteran in the space program, he was up on the space shuttle in April of 1984, made his first flight. He was the commander of this flight. He believed very strongly and was quick to point out to anyone who talked to him, the main thing he wanted to say is that the future of mankind, in his opinion, depended entirely on the development of space. And he was a firm believer that in order for mankind to survive, and in order for the space program to survive also, that we must explore further in outer space. We must go beyond the confines of Earth. And he saw this, and he saw his role as merely one person in developing the entire frontier of space, which he sees and saw as the only way to continue life on Earth. Now, that is not unique. You talk to almost anyone in the space program, and you get very similar feelings. Dick Scobie happened to be the one who went public several times with statements like that, so he got some recognition on that. But throughout the program,
unfortunately, we lost Bruce Hall's microphone there for just a moment as Bruce was coming to the conclusion that for those who were aboard the space shuttle today, there was no doubt in their mind that manned space flight and space exploration, not just the mechanical and electronic exploration of space, was an absolute necessity. Leo Krupp, if you're still with us in Los Angeles, you've heard this argument many, many times over the years, and no one would expect a pilot to come down anyway on the argument except that, yes, manned space exploration is not just something good to have, but is an absolute necessity. Your thoughts about the imperative, as you see it, of manned spaceflight?
Well, Dan, as I said many times, space exploration to me is just like back in the days when the Wright brothers learned to fly and we developed the jet airplanes. It's an evolution, it's an advancement in technology, and it's something we have to do if we want to keep moving ahead and enhancing our lives. And we've just barely dented the surface of space work. When we get the space station up and we start interplanetary travel and establish a moon station and these kind of things, these are way out in the future. But I do not think you should stop progress and stop the development of technology just because you have an accident. We've had accidents in the early airplanes, and think where we'd be if everyone stopped flying because the Wright brothers cracked up their first airplane. I don't think we would want to live in a world like that, and we have to keep developing. And an accident like this is very unfortunate. All the people involved in the program feel terrible about it. The people who are involved in it knew the risks they were taking, and it certainly should not jeopardize the future of the program.
Why wouldn't it be better, Leo Krupp, to concentrate mainly on missions such as the Voyager 2 mission, which has just brought back those spectacular pictures of Uranus?
Well, I think unmanned spaceflight is certainly very important, and it has to be pursued, but I also think it's essential that we have men in space, or women in space as well, and there are certain things that have to be done by men. They're more flexible than computers. You can take an unmanned space probe and program it to do anything you want, and you even have the capability of making some changes if things go wrong, but you cannot replace that human computer that you have on board, and we've proven this many, many times in the space program, the flexibility of man up there and to save a mission and to recapture something that has gone wrong. And I think it's just essential that we pursue both programs, the unmanned program as well as the manned program.
Friends, you have more connections in the National Aeronautics and Space Administration than any other person I know. You talk to them on a regular basis. How much pressure have they been feeling to get these launches off? They've been behind schedule, they've had delays, they have budget pressure. How much of that, honestly, candidly, has been showing through on them?
Was that question addressed to me, Dan?
Yes, it was, Leo.
I don't think NASA would subdue to any pressure. I think NASA is a type of organization that is not going to do anything until they're sure it's right. And they're going to investigate everything. And they're not going to be pressured by the media, by public opinion, to go on a launch before they're ready. And when NASA says they're ready to go, I, for one, believe 100% that they're ready to go.
Bruce Hall, if you're still with us and if your microphone is working in Florida, I'm told that we've been having some difficulty. We know we have been. Let's try it. With your contacts there, they've been feeling the pressure, have they not?
Dan, I would have to say that yes, they have been feeling the pressure because they announced a very ambitious schedule in 1985. They announced a very ambitious schedule also for 1986. Now, Leo Krupp is absolutely correct when he says that NASA had no intention of proceeding with any launch until they were absolutely ready for that launch.